The diplomatic chamber of the United Earth Council fell into a suffocating silence as Grand Hegemon Krelvex's ultimatum hung in the air like a poisonous mist. Admiral Emily Rodriguez studied the alien representative with a carefully neutral expression, her cybernetic eye performing rapid microanalyses that human biology could never achieve. Krelvex towered over the human representatives, his crystalline exoskeleton refracting the soft blue light of the chamber. Each movement suggested coiled violence, a predator barely restraining its impulse to strike. The Zorn had conquered hundreds of civilizations across the galaxy, reducing entire species to subservient colonies or complete extinction. Their galactic empire stretched across 15,000 star systems, a testament to their technological superiority and ruthless expansion. "Humanity will submit," Krelvex stated, his translator rendering the words with a clinical precision that failed to mask the underlying threat. "Your technological capabilities are primitive. Your social structures are chaotic. Your military is fractured. You have precisely one standard galactic cycle, equivalent to 7 of your Earth years, to completely surrender all planetary and extraplanetary resources to the Zorn Imperium." At the far end of the conference table, General Michael Chen shifted slightly. To an untrained observer, his movement might have seemed like simple discomfort. To those who knew him, it was a calculated micro-gesture of contained anticipation. The chamber's holographic displays flickered, showing simultaneous global broadcasts of the transmission. In Tokyo, workers in high-rise offices stopped to watch. In Sao Paulo, street vendors paused their sales. From the research stations in Antarctica to the lunar colonies, every human watched and waited. Krelvex continued, seemingly unaware of the subtle undercurrents of human communication happening around him. "Your options are simple: complete surrender or total annihilation. The Zorn Imperium does not negotiate. We do not compromise." Ambassador Laura Reyes, head of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps, maintained her composure. Her fingers, adorned with a simple quantum-encrypted communication ring, traced an almost imperceptible pattern, a coded message being transmitted even as the Zorn delegation spoke. Outside the chamber, the real response was already taking shape. In a small garage in Milwaukee, Jake Thompson, recently unemployed after his groundbreaking quantum engineering project was shelved, began assembling something that looked like a modified drone. But it was far more than a simple aerial vehicle. In a classified research facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Rachel Goldman reviewed schematics that would make the Zorn's most advanced weapons look like children's toys. Her team had been working in absolute secrecy, developing technologies that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Aboard the International Space Station, a group of multinational astronauts exchanged knowing glances. They had been preparing for this moment for years, training in simulation scenarios that most Earth-based military strategists would have considered pure science fiction. Krelvex seemed to expect an immediate response of terror or submission. Instead, he was met with a room full of professionals who looked almost amused. "We hear your terms," Admiral Rodriguez finally responded, her voice calm and measured. "The United Earth Council will review your proposal and provide a formal response through appropriate diplomatic channels." The Zorn delegation expected panic. They expected groveling. They expected surrender. They would get something entirely different. In that moment, as Krelvex looked around the chamber, he might have noticed something peculiar in the human's eyes. Not fear, not submission, but a strange, collective excitement that he could not comprehend. Humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly what they were made of. And the Zorn had no idea what was coming. The global response to the Zorn ultimatum looked like chaos to outside observers. But chaos was precisely the point. In a converted warehouse in Silicon Valley, Jake Thompson hunched over a workstation that looked like a mad scientist's playground. Scattered components from discarded smartphones, quantum processors, and experimental drone hardware covered every surface. His team, a motley crew of recently unemployed engineers, retired military technicians, and brilliant misfits, worked with an intensity that bordered on religious fervor. "We're not building weapons," Jake explained to a nervous investor during a late-night video call. "We're building adaptive systems that can think faster than any centralized command structure." Across the globe, similar scenes played out. In Mumbai, a collective of software engineers developed neural network algorithms that could predict and counter electronic warfare strategies. Their method wasn't about creating the most powerful weapon, but the most responsive one. Each line of code was a potential defense, each algorithm a shield that could reshape itself faster than an enemy could comprehend. Commander Robert Williams sat in a nondescript government facility, surrounded by holographic displays that seemed to dance with impossible complexity. To the Zorn intelligence networks constantly probing human communications, this looked like complete disorganization. Military units appeared to be moving randomly. Supply chains seemed disrupted. University research programs looked scattered and unfocused. In reality, it was the most coordinated response in human history. High school robotics teams received classified government contracts. Aerospace companies retooled production lines overnight. Renewable energy corporations developed power systems that could quickly convert to military applications. Native American tribal networks, with generations of guerrilla warfare knowledge, began providing tactical consultation to military strategists. Dr. Rachel Goldman's team in the Rocky Mountain Research Facility worked on technologies that defied conventional understanding. Quantum entanglement communication systems that could transmit information faster than light. Adaptive material sciences that could create armor capable of restructuring itself microseconds after an impact. Biological interfaces that blurred the line between human and machine. "We're not preparing for a war," Goldman told her team during a late-night strategy session. "We're preparing for a transformation." In Sao Paulo, a group of Brazilian biotech researchers developed medical technologies that could keep soldiers alive in conditions that would kill any other species. Their work wasn't just about survival, it was about pushing the boundaries of human adaptability. The Japanese robotics firms weren't just creating support units. They were developing autonomous systems that could learn and adapt in real time, systems that could make tactical decisions faster than any centralized command could process. What the Zorn saw as weakness, humans saw as strength. Their distributed network of innovation looked like chaos, but it was a carefully orchestrated symphony of human potential. Commander Williams understood something the Zorn did not. Humanity's greatest strength was never its individual components, but its ability to collaborate in ways that defied traditional understanding. "They expect a military," Williams muttered to himself, reviewing the global preparation reports. "We're giving them a living, breathing, adaptive organism." In a small garage in Milwaukee, Jake Thompson looked up from his workstation and smiled. The first prototype of his adaptive communication system was complete. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a defense system. It was something entirely new. The Zorn thought they were facing a conventional enemy. They were about to discover something else entirely. Humanity was preparing. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. Dr. Olivia Parker's fingers danced across the quantum computing interface, her eyes reflecting the intricate holographic displays that seemed to breathe with living complexity. The laboratory, hidden beneath the Rocky Mountain Research Facility, hummed with an energy that was part technological marvel, part pure human potential. "We're not just building technology," she murmured to her team of 27 researchers from 14 different countries. "We're creating living systems." The breakthrough had come from an unexpected combination of disciplines. Biomechanical engineers worked alongside quantum physicists. Neural network specialists collaborated with material scientists. Their project defied every conventional understanding of technological development. The first prototype materialized on the testing platform, a drone that was less a machine and more a living, thinking entity. Its exterior could reconfigure in milliseconds, shifting from a smooth aerodynamic surface to a complex array of sensors and adaptive armor. Traditional military hardware looked like stone tools compared to this creation. In Austin, Marcus Green's software team had developed an artificial intelligence system that could predict enemy strategies with terrifying accuracy. But it wasn't a traditional AI. It was a distributed network of learning algorithms that could think in ways no single computational system ever could. "Look at this," Green said, pointing to a holographic projection that showed potential Zorn military scenarios. The AI didn't just predict movements, it anticipated them, creating counter-strategies faster than any human or alien intelligence could process. Aboard the International Space Station, a team of astronauts tested the first adaptive spacecraft hull. Originally developed for protecting against micrometeorite impacts, the material could now reshape itself in response to energy signatures, physical stress, and potential threats. What once would have been a fatal breach could now be healed in milliseconds. Dr. Rachel Goldman walked through the research facility, reviewing prototypes that seemed to blur the line between technology and life. Communication systems that could predict and counter electronic warfare before it even began. Medical technologies that could keep a human body functional in conditions that would kill any other known species. The Japanese robotics team in Osaka had developed support units that could adapt their physical configuration in real time. A medical support robot could reconfigure itself from a delicate surgical assistant to a robust rescue mechanism in seconds. Their designs weren't just about functionality. They were about potential. Brazilian biotech researchers had created nanomedical systems that could repair human tissue at the cellular level, adapting to unknown biological threats faster than any traditional medical technology. A soldier injured in combat could be back to full functionality in hours, not weeks. In a small laboratory in New Zealand, a team of materials scientists had developed a hull coating that could absorb and redistribute energy from weapon impacts. What would destroy a traditional spacecraft could now be transformed into a source of additional propulsion. "We're not preparing for war," Dr. Parker told a visiting government official. "We're preparing for a fundamental reimagining of what's possible." The technologies emerging from these laboratories weren't just advances, they were a complete paradigm shift. Where the Zorn expected rigid, predictable systems, humans were creating something fluid, adaptive, almost alive. Marcus Green's AI system continued to run simulations. Thousands of potential scenarios played out in milliseconds. The Zorn believed they understood warfare. They had no idea what was coming. Jake Thompson arrived at the Rocky Mountain facility, bringing his own breakthrough, a communication system that could transmit information through quantum entanglement, making traditional communication intercepting technologies obsolete. His system didn't just send messages, it created living networks of information that could adapt and protect themselves. As the sun set outside the research facility, Dr. Olivia Parker looked at the collection of prototypes. Each one represented more than just a technological advancement. They represented human potential, the ability to reimagine, to adapt, to transform. The Zorn thought they were facing a conventional enemy. They were about to discover something entirely different. The Battle of Epsilon Eridani would be remembered as the moment humanity revealed its true nature to the galaxy. Captain Sarah Armstrong sat in the command chair of the experimental starship Horizon, her neural interface creating a symbiotic connection with the vessel that went beyond traditional human-machine interaction. Around her, the bridge crew moved with a synchronicity that seemed almost supernatural, each member an extension of a larger, living system. The Zorn battle group approached with overwhelming confidence. Their massive cruisers dwarfed the human vessels, crystalline hulls gleaming with centuries of technological refinement. Grand Admiral Krelnax, commanding the Zorn fleet, viewed the human ships with contemptuous disinterest. To the Zorn, this would be nothing more than a systematic extermination. Incoming Zorn battle formations, Lieutenant David Chen called out, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. Standard Imperial Assault Pattern Delta. Armstrong didn't respond verbally. Through the neural interface, she communicated with her entire squadron. 8 experimental craft that looked more like living organisms than traditional spacecraft. Each ship was a node in a distributed network, thinking and moving as a single entity. The first Zorn energy weapons fired. Massive plasma discharges that could vaporize conventional ships instantly. But these weren't conventional ships. The human squadron moved like liquid mercury. Where the Zorn expected rigid formations, they encountered something entirely different. Ships twisted and reshaped their energy fields, absorbing and redistributing incoming fire. What would have been a fatal impact became a source of additional momentum. Adaptive response protocol, Armstrong thought, and her entire squadron transformed. The first Zorn cruiser exploded not from direct weapon fire, but from its own energy being turned against it. Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez's ship, acting as a quantum relay, redirected the incoming plasma through a complex series of energy manipulations that the Zorn computer systems couldn't comprehend. Grand Admiral Krellnax watched in growing horror. "Impossible," he muttered, his crystalline exoskeleton shifting with agitation. The human ships weren't just defending, they were dancing. Each movement was a calculated response, each maneuver part of a larger, living strategy that defied every known principle of space combat. Another Zorn battleship disintegrated, not from external weapon fire, but from its own internal systems being subverted by a distributed network of quantum communication attacks. The human vessels weren't just fighting, they were thinking, adapting, evolving in real time. Jake Thompson's communication systems worked perfectly. The neural network linking the human ships allowed them to share tactical information faster than light, creating a living, breathing combat organism that could respond to threats before they fully materialized. Dr. Rachel Goldman's adaptive hull technologies proved their worth. Impacts that would have destroyed conventional ships became moments of tactical opportunity. The human vessels absorbed, redistributed, and transformed incoming energy with impossible efficiency. By the battle's end, 8 human ships had destroyed 3 Zorn capital ships and disabled 2 more. The casualties were entirely one-sided. "Status report," Captain Armstrong requested, though she already knew the answer through her neural link. "0 human losses," Lieutenant Chen reported. "Minimal system degradation. All ships fully operational." In the Zorn Command Center, Grand Admiral Krellnax struggled to process what had just occurred. This wasn't just a military defeat. This was a fundamental challenge to everything the Zorn understood about warfare, technology, and adaptation. Humanity had just sent a message to the galaxy. And the message was clear. We are not what you expected. Dr. Nathan Cole studied the holographic display, his fingers tracing complex linguistic patterns that mapped out the intricate social structure of the Zorn Imperium. Beside him, a diverse team of experts, linguists, anthropologists, psychologists, and communication specialists, worked with an intensity that bordered on scientific obsession. "It's not about breaking them," Cole explained to his team. "It's about understanding them so completely that we can dismantle their entire social framework from within." The Zorn civilization was built on a rigid hierarchical system that had remained unchanged for thousands of years. Their society was a complex web of social credits, hereditary ranks, and deeply ingrained belief systems that valued rigid order above all else. What humans saw as a strength, Cole's team recognized as a critical vulnerability. In a secure communication center, Marcus Green's advanced AI systems began crafting messages designed to exploit the smallest cracks in the Zorn's psychological armor. Each communication was a precision instrument, calibrated to create maximum psychological disruption. The first wave of psychological warfare began subtly. Carefully crafted transmissions began to appear in Zorn communication networks, messages that seemed to originate from within their own systems. These weren't simple propaganda. They were meticulously designed psychological triggers that would slowly erode the Zorn's confidence in their own leadership. Linguist Dr. Elena Rodriguez discovered the key. The Zorn language had specific grammatical structures that revealed deep-seated insecurities about social mobility and hierarchical status. By crafting messages that subtly challenged these linguistic patterns, they could introduce doubt at the most fundamental level of Zorn communication. "Watch this," Rodriguez said, highlighting a particular transmission. The message was structured in a way that would read as a challenge to mid-level Zorn military officers, suggesting that their current leadership was failing them, that their social credits were at risk, that their potential for advancement was being systematically suppressed. The results were almost immediate. Reports began to filter through of increased communication traffic between lower and mid-level Zorn military ranks. Subtle questions emerged. Challenges to established protocols became more frequent. The rigid Zorn command structure began to show its first real signs of strain. Dr. Cole's team wasn't just sending messages. They were creating a comprehensive psychological warfare strategy that attacked the Zorn's most fundamental social constructs. Social media platforms, adapted from human communication technologies, began to infiltrate Zorn communication networks. These weren't simple information channels. They were living, adaptive systems that could modify their approach in real time based on the psychological responses they generated. Jake Thompson's quantum communication systems proved invaluable. Messages could be transmitted in ways that made traditional interception impossible. Each communication was a complex, adaptive entity that could reshape itself based on the psychological environment it encountered. In the Zorn command centers, senior leadership began to notice the changes. Mid-level officers were asking questions. Challenges to established protocols became more frequent. The absolute certainty that had defined Zorn military culture began to crack. "We're not trying to defeat them," Dr. Cole explained during a classified briefing. "We're trying to help them evolve." The psychological assault wasn't about destruction. It was about transformation. By the mission's third month, something unprecedented began to happen. Zorn military units started to question their own mission. Lower-ranking officers began to communicate in ways that challenged their traditional hierarchical structures. The first seeds of internal doubt had been planted. Grand Hegemon Krulvex received the first reports of widespread internal questioning. For the first time in the Zorn Imperium's history, their absolute confidence began to waver. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war. They were conducting a species-wide intervention. The world had never been more united. In the heart of the Amazon rainforest, the Kayapo indigenous tribe worked alongside Brazilian quantum engineers, their generations of survival knowledge merging with cutting-edge technology. Warriors who had protected their lands for centuries now developed adaptive camouflage systems that could reshape themselves faster than any electronic tracking could detect. Dr. Amara Williams stood in a solar-powered research facility in Cape Town, watching as a team of African engineers developed power systems that could not only support military operations, but could also rapidly convert between civilian and defensive applications. Their technology wasn't just about creating weapons. It was about sustainable, adaptive infrastructure that could survive and thrive under the most extreme conditions. In Osaka, the robotics team led by Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura had created support units that defied traditional understanding of machine capabilities. Each robot was a living system, capable of reconfiguring its physical structure in milliseconds. A medical support unit could transform from a delicate surgical assistant to a robust rescue mechanism, adapting to whatever challenge presented itself. The International Space Station became a global coordination hub. Astronauts from 17 different countries worked in perfect synchronization, their neural communication systems allowing for instantaneous information sharing that transcended traditional language barriers. Every orbit brought new insights, new strategies, new possibilities. Native American tactical consultants from various tribes provided strategic insights that military planners had never considered. Generational knowledge of guerrilla warfare, environmental adaptation, and community resilience became crucial components of the global defense strategy. In New Zealand, marine biologists collaborated with aerospace engineers to develop aquatic and atmospheric adaptive technologies. Their research blurred the lines between biological adaptation and technological innovation. Underwater propulsion systems could now reshape themselves to match the most complex marine environments. The Russian robotics team in Novosibirsk developed autonomous support networks that could self-repair and redistribute resources with incredible efficiency. Their systems weren't just machines. They were living, thinking networks that could anticipate and respond to challenges before they fully materialized. Dr. Rachel Goldman's research facility in the Rocky Mountains became a global collaboration center. Researchers from every continent worked on technologies that pushed the boundaries of human potential. Quantum communication systems developed by Indian software engineers merged with medical nanotechnology from Korean research labs. In a small workshop in Mexico City, a team of young engineers developed communication encryption systems that made traditional interception technologies obsolete. Their approach wasn't about creating an impenetrable wall. It was about creating a living, adaptive communication network that could reshape itself in real time. The global response wasn't just a military mobilization. It was a complete reimagining of human potential. Universities became research hubs. High school robotics teams received classified government contracts. Every sector of human society began to transform, contributing to a global effort that defied traditional understanding of preparation and defense. Marcus Green's distributed AI systems worked overtime, creating complex simulation models that integrated information from every corner of the globe. The human response was becoming something entirely new, a living, breathing, adaptive organism that could think and respond faster than any centralized command structure. Jake Thompson's communication technologies allowed for unprecedented levels of global coordination. Information could be shared, analyzed, and acted upon faster than the Zorn could comprehend. What looked like chaos to an outside observer was actually the most coordinated response in human history. As the preparations continued, one thing became increasingly clear. Humanity was no longer fighting to defend itself. They were preparing to transform the galaxy. The Zorn had no idea what was coming. Grand Hegemon Kralvex stared at the holographic displays with a growing sense of incomprehension. The Zorn Imperium's carefully constructed galactic order was unraveling faster than any historical model could predict. It began with small fractures. Mid-level commanders started questioning established protocols. Communication networks once considered impenetrable now showed unexpected vulnerabilities. The psychological warfare conducted by human strategists had found the most precise pressure points in Zorn society. On the central communication hub of the Zorn flagship, communication analysts worked frantically. Their sophisticated tracking systems, which had monitored and controlled galactic communications for millennia, now seemed like primitive tools. Human communication networks moved like living organisms, adapting, reshaping, disappearing, and reappearing in patterns that defied traditional understanding. Admiral Krelnax reported directly to Kralvex, his crystalline exoskeleton vibrating with barely contained anxiety. "Our colony systems are destabilizing," he explained. "Lower-ranking officers are requesting information about human tactics. There are discussions happening that were never permitted in our social structure." The human approach was unprecedented. They weren't seeking total destruction. Instead, they were systematically exposing the fundamental weaknesses in the Zorn's millennia-old social and military systems. Colonies that had been under Zorn control for thousands of years began to show signs of unprecedented resistance. The rigid hierarchical system that had maintained Zorn dominance was now working against them. Each level of command was so focused on maintaining its own status that critical information was being blocked, distorted, or completely misunderstood. Dr. Nathan Cole's psychological warfare team had done more than simply send messages. They had introduced a virus of critical thinking into the Zorn's communication networks. Each transmission was carefully designed to challenge the most fundamental assumptions of Zorn society. Marcus Green's AI systems continued to analyze and predict Zorn responses with terrifying accuracy. What looked like random communication patterns to Zorn analysts were actually carefully orchestrated psychological interventions. The first major colony rebellion occurred in the Orion Spiral Arm. A group of lower-ranking Zorn administrators simply stopped following orders. They didn't fight. They didn't declare independence. They simply ceased to comply with the established protocols that had governed their society for millennia. Grand Hegemon Kralvex called an emergency council of the highest-ranking Zorn leadership. The meeting was a study in growing panic. Traditional communication protocols broke down. Each leader was more concerned with protecting their own status than addressing the systemic failure happening across the Imperium. "This is impossible," Kralvex muttered, reviewing the latest communication logs. Human messages were appearing in Zorn communication networks in ways that should have been completely impossible. They weren't just breaking through security protocols. They were reshaping the very nature of communication itself. The experimental starships that had decimated the Zorn fleet at Epsilon Eridani were more than just advanced technology. They were a living demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to existence. Where the Zorn saw rigid structures, humans saw adaptive potential. Jake Thompson's quantum communication systems had created networks that were almost biological in their complexity. Information moved in ways that defied traditional understanding of communication, transmission, and security. As the Zorn leadership argued, more colonies simply checked out. They didn't rebel. They didn't fight. They just stopped participating in the established system. The Zorn Imperium had never faced an enemy like this. Their entire civilization was built on the assumption of absolute control, of a hierarchical system that had remained unchanged for thousands of years. Humanity was showing them a different way of existing, and the Zorn had no idea how to respond. The meeting chamber aboard the international diplomatic platform hung with an anticipation that defied traditional diplomatic protocols. Representatives from every human nation stood alongside the first wave of Zorn delegates who had broken from the imperial hierarchy, a collection of mid-level administrators and forward-thinking military officers who had chosen evolution over extinction. Ambassador Laura Rice stood at the center, her presence radiating a calm that seemed to reshape the very atmosphere of the room. Behind her, a holographic display showed the complex web of human-developed technologies that had brought the Zorn Imperium to this moment. "We're not here to conquer," she began, her words translated through quantum communication systems that captured not just language, but intent and cultural nuance. "We're here to offer a different path." Dr. Nathan Cole and his team of psychological experts had prepared for this moment. The Zorn delegates, those who had survived the systemic collapse of their civilization, looked both terrified and fascinated. These were individuals who had been trained from birth to follow a rigid hierarchy, and now they were being offered something entirely different. Jake Thompson's communication technologies created a living translation matrix that did more than convert words. It translated entire cultural contexts, allowing for a level of understanding that went beyond simple language. The first Zorn delegate, Kralvex, a mid-level administrator who had been instrumental in the initial breakaway from imperial control, spoke hesitantly. "We do not understand," he admitted. "Your goal is not total subjugation." Dr. Rachel Goldman stepped forward, bringing with her a holographic representation of the technologies that had been developed. It wasn't a display of weapons or military might. Instead, it showed adaptive systems, collaborative technologies, medical breakthroughs that could transform entire civilizations. "Our goal," she explained, "is mutual evolution." The proposal was radical. Humanity would share its technological developments, but more importantly, they would help the Zorn redesign their entire social structure. The rigid hierarchy that had defined Zorn civilization for thousands of years would be replaced by a more adaptive, collaborative system. Marcus Green's AI systems had developed comprehensive models showing how this transformation could occur. It wasn't about destroying the Zorn culture. It was about helping them discover their own potential for adaptation and growth. The diplomatic platform became a living laboratory of possibility. Human researchers worked alongside Zorn delegates, demonstrating technologies that could reshape entire planetary ecosystems. Quantum communication systems that could connect distant civilizations. Medical technologies that could extend life and reduce suffering. Educational systems that valued individual potential over rigid social structures. Captain Sarah Armstrong presented the first collaborative space exploration initiative. Human and Zorn researchers would work together to explore regions of space that neither civilization could have reached alone. It was more than a diplomatic gesture. It was an invitation to a new way of existing. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the linguistic expert who had been crucial in understanding Zorn communication, helped develop translation systems that did more than convert words. They created bridges between fundamentally different ways of thinking. The Zorn delegates began to understand something profound. Humanity wasn't offering surrender or conquest. They were offering transformation. Jake Thompson's communication networks continued to evolve, creating links between human and Zorn technologies that went beyond simple information sharing. These were living networks that could adapt, grow, and transform in real time. As the first day of negotiations concluded, something unprecedented happened. The Zorn delegates, who had been trained their entire lives to maintain strict hierarchical boundaries, began to collaborate in ways they had never imagined possible. Dr. Nathan Cole watched the interactions with a sense of profound hope. This wasn't just a diplomatic resolution. This was the beginning of something entirely new. The galaxy was about to change. And humanity had just demonstrated that the most powerful weapon was not technology. It was the ability to imagine a different way of existing.